Well, hi everybody. Welcome to Stratosphere Lounge. I'm your host, Bill Whittle, and it is what is it, the 18th of November. Uh, as we sit here, we have hey, hi everybody. We have the Rittenhouse jury is still out. What they're doing, I don't know. I saw just before we started recording. Some speculation that there was at least one rogue jury member, perhaps a foreman. Um, in this case, the rogue part of it being not not willing to acquit because it seems like there's just, as many people have said, doesn't seem like there's more open and shut cases self-defense. Uh, the political pressure on this trial is obviously insane, and the media. I think that this is worse than it's certainly worse than what they did to. Oh gosh, it's one of those. It's going to be one of those days. I can feel it already. Oh golly, the Supreme Court Justice, uh, not Gorsuch. This is the one thing about having a defaulty memory, is that the memory comes back to me about an 8 second lag. Um, Kavanaugh, thank you very much. Here they come. 25 of them to remind me that I should have remembered Kavanaugh. I thought the character assassination they did on Kavanaugh was uh, the depths of evil, but what's happening to this kid is is beyond imagination, especially given the evidence. Um, in both cases, you have uh, obviously good people who are finding themselves under this kind of assault and finding themselves in the exact situation that we built a society so that we wouldn't find ourselves. That situation is that of an innocent person falsely accused for a crime. The presumption of innocence is the hallmark of this society, and to some large degree to other Western societies. And what comes with that is the understanding that if you are innocent until proven guilty, that means some guilty people are going to get away, and you just have to eat that. Uh, and that's why O.J. Simpson walked away from his murder trial, because the prosecution did such a miserable job of of proving the case. Um, in any event, here you've got with Kavanaugh and Kyle Rittenhouse, you've got people who are clearly innocent, and Kavanaugh had it bad. But Kyle's in jail and has been for a long time. Um, the here's what's on trial with Kavanaugh. Everybody thinks that Rittenberg's on trial. He's not. It's not him. It's not about him at all. Um, it's about. Oh, is he on bail? Oh, I think that's right. Yeah, and I think the guy from My Pillow helped bail him out. Here's what's on trial. Okay, it's self-defense. It's the ability to defend yourself that's on trial, and I'll be more specific. It's the ability to defend yourself with a firearm that's on trial, and I'll be more specific. It's your ability to defend yourself with a firearm called an AR-15 that's on trial. That's what's on trial, and and if he is acquitted, as he should be, the reason he's not is because if this thing that happened in front of everybody's eyes is true, then yeah, actually, Marish has got it at another level. It's the ability to defend yourself with a firearm named an AR-15 against Antifa or Black Lives Matter. That's what's on trial here. I'm reminded of the couple that were big Black Lives Matter supporters until they burst into their gated neighborhood and started burning things, and they came out on the porch with weapons in their hands, and all of a sudden those people were absolutely demonized and given the left wing treatment and all the rest of it. But of course, that didn't escalate to this level. Um, you know, I really genuinely feel the tide is turning. I've been talking about that for several shows. I genuinely feel that. Um, and and I think the left is getting more and more desperate. But um, as I've said several times, here's the problem. In virtually all the wars I've studied, and especially the ones of the 20th century, the real killing happens after the war is won. After the enemy is defeated and has no chance to win, that's when the serious killing starts. Now we're in a culture war, so we're really talking about killing institutions, killing uh, principles, but it's the same dynamic. When when you launch an assault, first of all, I think you have to be fundamentally insane to start any kind of a war. Uh, it was insane of the Japanese to attack the Americans at Pearl Harbor. It was insane of Adolf Hitler to attack Russia. Insane. There is no way that they ever could have won that. So just the attack alone is a function of insanity brought on by arrogance and hubris. And it's not just because we've been the good guys here. It would be insane. I'm not saying it's insane to go to war against China, but it was clearly would be insane if we thought we could invade China and occupy China. That's insane. No one's talking about that. It's insane. And so when you get insane people doing these kind of things, and they realize that all of their ambition has been shattered, then they go into a special kind of a um, uh, forgive the presumption of this, but it becomes a kind of Götterdämmerung, right? It becomes it's the twilight of the gods. It's all of Wagner in all the volume, where I have to stop. Did he actually say that? Tom Bombadil 61 says that the prosecution said, once you are the one that brings a firearm, you lose the right to self-defense. Did he really say that? That guy's a work of art. Um, but back to the point I was making. When it becomes clear to aggressive people that their offensive has failed, then they go into this orgy of self-destruction. And for those people who say, well, we shouldn't have dropped the bomb on Japan, they were ready to surrender. Well, they weren't ready to surrender. And the reason we know they weren't ready to surrender was they didn't surrender after we dropped an atomic bomb on them. And they nearly didn't surrender after we dropped 2 atomic bombs on them. So when you've got that kind of ego and that ego is destroyed, the narcissism of it is what kind of kicks in. The narcissism of Hitler, the narcissism of the Imperial Japanese, the narcissism of the left, when they realize that this big thing that they think they have to accomplish in order to achieve some sort of personal satisfaction has failed, then the narcissism kicks in and you're left with, well, if I can't win, then no one will win. Hitler basically the last several months just gave orders to completely destroy his own country. He ordered his underground metro system flooded to slow the Russians down. They're 6 blocks away. Flood the metro. Mein Führer, there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Berliners, loyal Germans, who have supported you your entire career down there, huddling away to keep away from the artillery. I don't care, says Hitler. Since we've lost the war, we don't deserve to live. So kill everybody, burn everything, blow everything up, and then there you are. Same thing with the Japanese. The war was over for years before the Japanese surrendered. And as we got closer and closer, they got harder and harder and harder line, harder line, harder line. If the atomic bombs hadn't been there, look, just since I'm on this roll here, the reason the atomic bombs ended the war, they ended the war early. There's no question that we would have won the war without them, but they ended the war early and millions of more people would have died. And the reason is because the atomic bombs people think that the atomic bombs ended the war because of overwhelming force. Yes, but the Japanese and the imperial high command, the Japanese leadership, were ready to sacrifice the entire country. They said, we'll have 20 million people with bamboo spears waiting for the Americans on the beach. It wasn't that they didn't want to take casualties. The reason that the atomic bombs ended the war was they gave the emperor a reason to end the war. It was a face-saving reason. It was something he could use to say, you see, we can't fight to the death after all because of this wonder weapon. Because they were honor bound to do it. They would have kept doing it. And the people who say they would have kept doing it aren't internet commentators, and they're certainly not left-wing comedians. These are the people who launched. One of them was the guy who launched the raid on Pearl Harbor. He was leading the airstrike on Pearl Harbor. He said you had to drop that bomb because if you hadn't, we would have fought you until there were none of us left. And so you get in this orgy of self-destruction when you run into this kind of ego and hubris, and when that kind of narcissism catches fire and implodes, then the narcissist has a period of time where he is basically saying, okay, he's saying what every murderer and psychopath says. If I can't have her, then no one can, right? If she's not going to go out with me, if she's not going to be my girlfriend, then I'll kill her. That's the attitude that these kind of psychopaths have. So you can expect things to get a lot worse, and this may happen, and the acquittal may not come. And okay, this is part of the. It's not even the end game yet. It's probably the halfway point. But I am convinced that they failed. I know they failed. The Republican to Democrat polling has never been higher in favor of Republicans. So the more woke we get, the more they have the ability to deliver the message and actually act on it, the lower their numbers get, because it's no longer comparing their philosophy against the imperfect real. Now it's, okay. It was always, well, Trump this, Trump this, Trump. Okay, and who do we have? Well, we've got this perfect guy, Joe Biden. He's just perfect. He's absolutely wonderful. Calm, moderate guy. We got a multiracial vice president, and all of them extremely competent. Okay, that's the imperfect hypothetical. The perfect real is out there, and so you have to give it to him. All right, people. If I don't have to restate what I think about the election, but nevertheless, the people that did legitimately vote for Joe Biden had no idea who Joe Biden was, or who Kamala Harris was. And it's very difficult to blame them because the media stranglehold on information is so intense. Listen, this campaign would have been over the second that Hunter Biden's laptop appeared. All of this stuff in there is utterly damning. It is a criminal indictment. But no, they got the Justice Department, they got the deep state, they got the media. Nobody hears about it. Barack Obama would never have been president with the press, not with his career starting in Bill Ayer's, parlor, and not with spending 1,000 Sundays. That's the first video we did, Jeremy and I did, right before he was elected, I think. When we started Declaration Entertainment, Jeremy and I did a video called 1,000 Sundays, and we basically argued that look, Obama was in that church for I don't know how many years it was, how many years it takes, I've forgotten now, to get to 1,000 Sundays, but 20 years, is it something like that? But he sat in that church for 1,000 Sundays and listened to this Reverend Wright talking about how white people need to, basically get strung up. If that had been reported, he never would have been president, but it doesn't. So here we are. Nevertheless, I'm convinced that they are all out. I think as I've said, November 4th of 2020 was an absolute sneak attack of the institutions on this country. We knew they were massing their forces. We knew that that there was a lot of real suspicious stuff going on out there, but we didn't realize, because you never do, that all of this was massing for a sneak attack, and then it was over. And by the time it was over, it was there. There you go. Oh, I'd love to repeat that mobile, but that's just too good for words. So the line is held, and now we have to gather our strength, and as I mentioned in the second fleet, which I thought was really quite a good moving back to America, actually. For those of you that didn't see it, or if I wasn't clear enough, the point I was trying to make is that the society that we had prior to November 4th, 2020 was not capable of defending ourselves against this kind of mimetic attack from professional liars and their incredibly developed network of information control. The society that we had on November 4th, 2020, was not capable of defending us against what happened. And so the sneak attack succeeded. And now we've stopped them. We're not in any position to roll them back yet, but we've stopped them. And now we have to think about, we have to design the second fleet. The point of that essay was the fleet that sank at Pearl Harbor could not have defended the United States against the Japanese Navy. It had to sink. We had to get the slap in the face and the punch in the gut to realize that no, all of that stuff was obsolete. We got to go right back to the drawing boards, and we got to do something. We got to do to the Japanese what the Japanese did to us: build a newer, better Navy. And so we did. So 1942, what do we get? We get the Doolittle raid from Morale, which actually triggered Midway. Midway wouldn't have happened. We would have lost at Midway if the Doolittle raid hadn't bombed the Emperor's palace and shamed Yamamoto into going to Midway with 4 carriers instead of 6. If he'd waited another month or two and gotten his 2 carriers back from the Coral Sea, then it would have been 6 decks against 3. We would have lost Midway. So 42, Midway. It's over at that point. They're done. Kito Butai has lost. The heart of Kito Butai is gone. Not just the decks, the pilots, and the crews, and all the rest of it. So then we spend all of 1943 and all of 1944 getting closer and closer and getting more and more fatalities. And during 43, really during 43 and 44, we start building things like the Iowa-class battleships and the Essex-class carriers. And then we start building a bunch of them. And that's the fleet that beat Japan. And now we have to figure out how to do that culturally. We have to figure out how to build a culture that can defend against this kind of an attack. We hadn't the faintest idea of how to defend against this kind of an attack. We thought they just keep just slowly coming in like the tide. But woke up on November 5th and said, nope, that's not what they did at all. They did it right in front of our eyes. And it's not like we didn't shoot back. We shot back. But we shot back in the same way that the guys at Pearl Harbor shot back. Oh, we flamed a Japanese bomber. Okay. You know, it's a nice thing to see one of those going down anyway. But the planes sank our fleet, then they returned to their carriers. We got a couple of them. We didn't repel it. And they did it right in front of our eyes. Helios has got an interesting point here, which I will get to in a second because it kind of connects to this. The problem with this psychological war, this mimetic war, is that we don't know how to fight it. And the one thing we don't realize is how weak our opponents are. How weak our opponents are. If they were strong, they could force us on us, but they can't. They have to use our psychology against us. They have to perform this form of mental judo, which means they're going to take all of our momentum and just step out of the way and use our momentum against us. So In this case, our momentum is our decency, it's our patriotism, it's our willingness, not only willingness, it's our imperative, psychological imperative to play by the rules. All of these things are what caused the 2020 election to go the way it was, which is why the Supreme Court had to get involved. Because if the Supreme Court had gotten involved and said one way or another, then we would be able to say, okay, well, this is legal, but it didn't, it never happened. It never happened. But my point is there a weakness? And I'm sorry, I forgot who said it just a second ago. Helios, 1776, said, all I want for Christmas is 100 million Americans to wake up and realize that they should all start paying taxes. And when you say something that obvious, now you've cut the Gordian knot of the psychological of the psychological kill box that we're in. Just think about that for a second. If everybody in this country, or even if just the conservatives in this country, all decided to not pay their taxes, then what would happen? You would simply starve the beast, and they can't arrest all of us, and undoubtedly they would arrest the people who were the higher profile, but all the rest. But this is what I'm saying in terms of like we make our own chains. We make our own chains. We could stop this federal government tomorrow if we all just said, well, we're going to not pay our taxes. Well, some of you are going to go to jail for that or lose your house or your credit rating or whatever. Okay. That's it. That's it. They can never, ever let that realization out. That we are essentially being led by our noses, and if we decided not to be led by our noses, then this thing would be over overnight. This analogy has been beaten to death, but it's a really good one, and a lot of people get it wrong. The way they train elephants is they put a chain around its leg, and when the elephant starts pulling against the chain, and the chain is secured to a heavy spike or post or something, the elephant will pull against the chain and it'll realize it's getting resistance and it can't move its leg, so it stops trying. But the point of all this is, once that conditioning has been set in the mind of the elephant, then you no longer have to chain the elephant with a chain. All you have to do is put essentially a thin little rope around it, because as soon as the elephant feels the resistance, it knows it's chained in place. But that's how it works. You apply this kind of intense conditioning, and at that point you don't have to back it up anymore. You don't have to back it up. You don't have to constantly have a chain and a steel post. You can just constrain an elephant by an interesting choice of animals, isn't it? When you get into the symbology of the GOP and the Democratic Party, you've got this powerful creature that's basically under the control of its own conditioning, and here we are, and that's what we are. And our job is to find a way to defend against that without us turning into them. But the culture that we were on November 4th, 2020 is not capable of dealing with these people. So we have to do something as the United States did in 1943 and 44. We got to design a culture that keeps all of our freedoms, uses our strengths, but is capable of overwhelmingly defeating this latest threat to our country. And that's it. A number of people in the comment section are saying that, the Republicans, Trump never had a plan. They're concerned that the Republicans will throw away the big win in 2020 or 2024. Republican ability to snatch defeat from the jaws of victory. This is what I'm talking about. When you start saying, well, Republican politicians failed us, ... That's just plain First Fleet problem, right? That's a First Fleet problem. For most of our history, we could count on a political party and if not a fair news media, then at least opposing news media's opposition papers, if to more or less keep this country free. Those days are gone now. They're gone. I don't know how many Republicans voted for this most recent spending travesty, but let's not forget, we are at least $25,000 billion in debt, and not all of those votes came from Democrats. In fact, I'd be very interested to know if somebody could do the math. I'll bet you anything 40% of the total votes that got us into this trouble were Republicans. We're dealing with people who go into politics in order to advance power. And that means that the only people that we can get to fight this are people who go into politics because they don't want to. And that is a much tougher proposition. I know one of those guys. I know a guy who's a very successful guy up in Idaho. He's the most brilliant guy I know. And he's the most American guy I know. He's done so many things on his own, what he's achieved and what he's done. It's incredible. And he finally got into local politics because he had to and because he cared. But it is not Iowa. But even then, you've got very few troops backing you up. So we're going to see. I haven't heard anything about what actual poll watching went on in Virginia. Yes, Dave Big Booty, that's the guy. But I don't think we're going to be snoozing through the night of the next election. I don't think we're going to be like, let's put it this way. In 2020, we were told in 5 states, well, we've decided to stop counting. That alone was the sight of Japanese planes blowing up things, and we simply couldn't believe it. It was so obvious that we couldn't believe it. It was like watching the towers come down. You couldn't process it. We stopped counting? Yeah, we decided to stop counting tonight. Okay, I guess, is it official? Yeah, we've officially decided. The state's Secretary of State or whatever has decided that we're going to stop counting. We'll resume counting in the morning. And that's the shock of it, shock and awe. That's the kind of thing where if this were to happen again tomorrow, we would say, oh, no. We saw what happened, and we know what's going on. But we were completely gobsmacked. It's like they stopped counting. I was on TV at Daily Wire. Most of the time I spent watching Daily Wire in the wings. They brought me on real late when they had time to kill. And I remember so clearly that while I was on the air, President Trump came out and made that announcement saying something very strange is going on. They're stealing the election. And Ben Shapiro said, that is the most irresponsible thing to say I've ever heard. There's no evidence whatsoever that anybody has stolen or tampering with the election. And I turned to him, I said, Ben, the fact that they stopped counting is the evidence. That's the evidence. It's right in front of your eyes. It's so apparent you can't see it. So this is the kind of thing we're going to have to do. And look, I would rather fight this kind of war than the one that my dad had to fight. I'd rather personally fight a war where the worst thing can happen to me is lose my job or my Facebook connections or whatever. But nevertheless, because the consequences are so sterile, because there's no blood in the street in this war, we don't really see it as the kind of war it is. But if you look at the damage that it's done to this country and will do to this country, if this was an actual invasion and there were enemy soldiers in uniform who we could shoot at, the streets would be running red with blood because we would realize the threat. C.P. Tomes captured it. He said, Shapiro can't imagine the reality of how the other side operates because he would never think to cheat that way. That's the key. That's the key. I'm not blaming Ben for that, and I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm just saying it may be because I wasn't on camera all night that I could sit back, and I was in the room watching with Adam Baldwin and Nick Searcy, and Adam Baldwin turned to me after they called, certainly after they called Florida, but somewhere in the, just 3 or 4 minutes before they called Arizona for Biden with 4% of the vote in. Right before then, I was sitting there watching this giant screen at Daily Wire here in Los Angeles. I was sitting there with Adam Baldwin. Adam Baldwin said, I think now we should turn to MSNBC so we can watch the crying. That's how sure we were, and that's how things went. And I said, well, let's give it a few minutes. And, there they go. So I'm not dropping names, I am, but no one was ready for it. Yeah, I played Jane on Firefly and Serenity, and he played Animal Mother in Full Metal Jacket. I mean, that was a role of a lifetime. It's not everybody gets to start their acting career with Stanley Kubrick. But in any event, here we are. So we have to figure out how we're going to build a society that has not only the psychological means of defending ourselves against these people, but one that actually has psychological weapons that outclass their weapons. They have to be better than their weapons. We have to build a fleet that is better than the Japanese fleet that sank the first fleet at Pearl Harbor. And that's exactly what we did, and that's exactly what we're going to do. It's just a question of what does it look like. One thing I've noticed is that, I love analogies. I think we all learn through analogies. So let's use another analogy, and let's go back to the same cast of characters. One of the things in the beginning of the war in Guadalcanal, the Japanese had a short-term advantage, and the short-term advantage was our compassion. In the early days of Guadalcanal, and for several months, they could get away with things like having a wounded Japanese soldier calling for a medic, and we'd send a corpsman over and 2 other guys, and then the corpsman would bend over and start to bandage up this Japanese soldier, and he'd pop the grenade that he'd been holding the whole time and kill 3 or 4 of our guys. The most egregious example that I ever heard of is there was an island out in Iron Bottom Sound. We had taken the actual island of Guadalcanal, and there was an island out there where the Japanese garrison was starving to death. And I don't know how many guys there were out there, maybe 40, 50, something like that. And some wonderful, sweethearted, good, decent man who was a Marine said, we can't let them starve to death out there, so why don't we go over there? Waving the white flag, that's the key. They're waving the white flag, they've surrendered. Let's go over there and get them out of there, get them to a prison camp. Okay, so the guys take a Higgins boat or whatever it was over to this island. The Japanese are waving the white flag. The Americans get off, ready to get their surrender. Once they're all off the boat, the Japanese drop the white flag. They open up with the machine guns, kill all the Marines, and anyone who had a globe and anchor tattoo on their arm, they hacked the arm off and stacked them on the beach. Now, of course, they were all eventually, not eventually, I'm sure they were quite quickly overrun and killed, but that's what I'm talking about, short-term advantage, right? You get the short period of time when you're using the enemies, using our goodness against us. But the Japanese had enormous built-in disadvantages, and these are the things that we have to find. And the most obvious one is the samurai, is a suicide charge. This idea that that the Japanese are gonna go out as warriors waving swords. The Japanese commitment to this last-ditch samurai charge saved thousands and thousands of American lives. It was the best thing that could have happened to us in terms of their psychology and their tactics, Because as terrifying as one of these suicide charges is, especially in the middle of the night, especially at the beginning of the war in Guadalcanal, it's hard to imagine anything more terrifying than that. And some of them did break through the lines and so on. But as a general rule, when the Japanese reached the point where they were going to take what was left of their men, and it was often significant amounts. This happened at Guadalcanal fairly early in the battle, when the original commanders realized we had taken the island, the Japanese had sent a force, fairly significant force, to get the island back. And when the commander of that Japanese force realized that they weren't going to succeed, he got up and led a suicide charge against American positions for honor. Okay, great. So when you've got this suicide charge coming at you, now the Ma Deuce becomes kind of a cool thing to have. That 50 caliber machine gun, the M2, which is still with us in its exact same form today, you couldn't ask for anything better. The thing that the Japanese could have done to hurt us the most is, if you had 400 guys for a Japanese suicide squad, if you really wanted to get America out of the war, you put every one of those 400 guys into sniper positions, kill as many Americans as you can, over as long a period of time as you can, bleed us, and get us to the point where we just simply aren't willing to pay the price anymore. But when their weakness, their psychological weakness is, well, we're going to do this for honor for the emperor, then we found a key into their psychology. Now we find a way to use their psychology against them the way that they've been using our psychology against us. And these are the things we need to be doing right now. And I have come to the conclusion, having watched a fair amount of this over time, and especially over this last year, especially over the last couple of months, is that the Banzai charge, thank you, that's the term I was looking for. Cody MacArthur, if anybody named MacArthur gets a read. The Banzai charge was sort of a tactic that the Europeans had beaten out of them in the Great War. If the Japanese had been in the trenches, they wouldn't have tried a lot of what they did 20 years later. That's an excellent point, but I still think they would have done it because they didn't do it for tactical reasons. The suicide Banzai charge was never, ever intended to win. It was something they had to do for their honor. It was something that was built into that culture. And so, since it was built into the culture, they had to do it. And this is the weakness that they found with us, right? We play by the rules. So if the official ruling comes in and says that Joe Biden won this county, and it's been certified by the Secretary of State, and not only did he win this precinct, he won by more people than are in the precinct, then we run into this, but it's certified? Yes, it's certified. The Secretary of State, well, surely the Supreme Court will. Nope, the Supreme Court won't touch it. And so there's the key to our psychological weakness. And now we have found one of the keys to their psychological weakness, and that is they don't like being laughed at. They don't like it. They cannot handle it. And the Let's Go Brandon phenomenon is a phenomenon because it's the first time in this war where the good guys have had a weapon that actually works. It's like the introduction of a flamethrower or something. You got all these guys in these little hidey holes and caves and stuff, and you got to go crawling in there one by one with a pistol. All of a sudden, no, try this. Oh, now we got an entirely different game now. Now we got a whole different game. The Let's Go Brandon thing uses mockery and it uses, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not going to look at the comment section because I got to remember this word. Ridicule. And ridicule they can't take. The reason they can't take ridicule is because their entire psychology is predicated on their superiority. The psychology of progressives is predicated on the idea that we all have to say the same thing and talk about the same thing and believe the same thing so that we can all prove to each other how smart we are. And as long as this little circle jerk continues to go around, then they've got morale and all the rest of it. But if you can laugh at them, not fight them, they expect to be fighted. If you can laugh at them and just, come on, really, you actually believe this stuff? If you can laugh at them, then you got them. You have castrated them. You've disarmed them. They it's like picking a cat up by the scruff of the neck. It's instinctive. That's how mother cats carry kittens around. So if you pick up a cat by the scruff of the neck there, the cat will freeze. And there's nothing the cat can do about it. That's wired into the cat. And so now we have found what the weapon is. And it's not been a mystery. We just haven't seen it in action. We've always known it was ridicule. Mark Twain said it was ridicule. Mark Twain, in Letters to the Earth, was writing as Satan, basically, and said, you idiot earthlings, you've got the one weapon that can defeat all of the evil in the world. You can just laugh at it, but you don't use it. Right? Okay, so there you go. Anyway, this is what we have to do. And right now, as we're discussing this, we've got an innocent man on trial, essentially for his life, fighting against this open evil, this open lying, in order to get this political conviction. And people like you and me still, no matter how many times we see it, we still cannot quite believe that people could be this evil, that they could be this evil. But yes, they actually could. Thank you, Mopomoto. Yes, they can destroy a man like Kavanaugh. They can destroy a man like Kyle Rittenhouse, who went over there to put out a fire. My favorite moment in the trial, which I have not been watching very closely, by the way, because I can't bear to. But when the prosecutors, well, why did you go over there? What made you go over there and suddenly go and try to put out this fire? Who did you think you were? Why did you go over there? And he turned and said, because it was a fire? That's it. That's it. That moment for me. Why did you do this? We cannot understand each other anymore. They cannot understand why somebody who's not owning that property would go over there and try to put out a fire, because they're the kind of people who would never occur to them to do that. That's how awful they are. So why'd you go over there? What made you go over there and get involved? Because it was a fire? And watching him break down, because I would have broken down much earlier and much more frequently. There's a guy, he was a pilot, and I don't remember his name, this is from a long, long time ago. But there was an aviation writer named Jim Campbell, and Zoom Campbell, and he was a real bad guy. I think he's probably still out there. But he was the kind of guy who would, if somebody pulled their advertising from his magazine, he'd basically just say that their airplane is a suicide box. And he would apparently call Child Protective Services on people that he didn't like and say that guy's abusing his children. We can hear screams. So Child Protective Services goes over to the house, and they knock on the door. And they go in, and in the space of 4 or 5 minutes, they realize this is insane. Of course these people are great parents. Of course they love their children. There's no sign whatsoever of abuse here. But he could then claim that family has been investigated by Child Protective Services for abusing their children. See how it works? All you have to do is throw the accusation. And there's no consequences for it. There's no consequences for bearing false witness. There's no consequence. Christy Blasey Ford, what is she doing now? She should be in jail for the rest of her life. She should be in jail for the rest of her life for lying under oath in order to assassinate somebody for a political reason. Anyway, Fauci too, don't even start me with. Let's take Fauci as an example of the kind of thing I'm talking about with this new culture that we need to build, okay? The biggest single mistake Donald Trump made as president was appointing Fauci. And whether I'm sure he didn't know, but he should have known It's not like he's without power. I know he's up against the entire swamp, the entire deep state. I know the FBI colluded to get him out of office. I know all of this, and I'm not really criticizing him other than to say that that by the time we got to this, he should have seen enough of the dirty tricks that these people play for him to have gotten the research on who this guy was. Yeah, Martin's got it. It's like Trump's biggest mistake was not firing everyone. Yes, he should have fired everybody. And then even his was it Bill Barr who came in at the last minute? Oh, he seems like a good guy. No, he's not. He's not. No. I still want to know what the psychological lever is. I still don't understand it. I still don't get it. And I suspect it's probably because of my own psychological limitations. There is something that is making people do awful things, lie, cheat, overthrow justice. There's something making them do it. What is it? Is it a lust for power? Well, certainly that plus. Is it money? Now I'm at the point where I just pray it's money. Anytime I see anything I look at and I go, my God, this is horrible. Now I'm at the point where I say, please God, please just let it be simple greed and not some, gigantic plan to do this. But honestly, what makes you do that? So anyway, here we are. And if we think that that the answer is a different guy for president or the same guy for president or the Republicans or even really on some level political action as we understand it today in terms of helping out the Republicans and so on, these are the kind of things we can do to that's like not sinking the rest of the fleet, but it's not what's going to win. What's going to win is something that hasn't been built yet. And I've got I'm like a naval architect. I've got like this, I can draw like this kind of vague outline of what this super battleship's going to look like, but I'm certainly not at the point yet where I can say this many guns, this caliber here, and we're going to have this and this and this going to be powered by this, and here's what the length is going to be. I'm not anywhere near that point yet, but I can see the outline of a culture that is able to defend itself against this. And one of the things it's going to have to do is it's going to have to learn how to use its own nuclear weapon. The left has a nuclear weapon, and we have a nuclear weapon. Their nuclear weapon is racist. Their nuclear weapon is the accusation of racism. Accusing good people of things that are evil gets good people to shut up. It's incredibly powerful. That's their nuclear weapon. Our nuclear weapon is that we can laugh at them, and our nuclear weapon is that their nuclear weapon doesn't work if we don't care. If we don't care, then then they have no power over us. We did a script read on Monday, which we'll get up there in the next several days, I guess. Zoe and I read the whole Thieves for Dungeon script, and there comes a point early in this story where we're crossing this bridge and a bunch of feral Ocasios come out and start screaming, racist, racist. And I stopped. The Sir William character, the white knight, and when I say white knight, I mean the guy who's got somewhat lighter skin than the other guy, is stopped by this, racist, racist. And Zoe says, just ignore it. I can't move my legs, I can't move my arms. And then Zoe finally goes to a candle and he gets, just fluffs out the candle, grabs a bunch of the wax, turns it into these little things, sticks it in my ear, and now I can fight again. That's the power. So there we go. That's a pretty decent starting rant, I guess. And I'm very, very, very curious to see what effect this weapon I'm working on will have in terms of ridicule. Good ridicule, sharp ridicule. I know that they had an absolute cow over that that Republican tweeting like a very, very bad anime thing, right? They just had a cow over that. So, there you go. I'll see what I can do about that. All right, I'll see what I can do about that, wizard. Anyway, I have to run a short show tonight because I've got something I have to help my wife do. But yeah, I think that's a pretty decent hour. So let me take a quick gander over at BillWhittlecom, and I know I'm not going to be able to get to all the questions, and I will try to knock. I should just do a show that does nothing but knock down questions. Then I can go back to Facebook, because this really is a show that kind of predated the whole membership thing. But let me have a look here. And so, there's 11, 18 questions. Okay. Let's see. I'm just going to try knocking these things down and not spend an hour on each one of them. Okay, so let's see what we got. Gerard Rupert. Hey, Gerard. Says, not sure if me starting a question list is kosher, but here we go. It is. Everything's kosher here. Well, I'm getting to the point where I can't stand dealing with liberals, progressives in any way, shape, or form. Amen. I hear you, brother. I don't want to listen to them. I don't want to read about them. I don't want to watch them on the news, and I sure as hell don't want to talk to them. Not my friends, not my family, and certainly not anonymous a-holes on social media. I can feel my blood pressure rising and my temples pounding just writing this. Should I resist my desire for peace and sanity and continue to interact with these people, or should I hide in my man cave and enjoy the calm? Is there a third option I'm not seeing? Great, great question, especially since you're asking it from a guy who had the 1,000-yard stare a week or two ago and been feeling this a lot. I think the answer is, strangely enough, is to do both, to be honest with you. I think it's to do both. I think that you have to withdraw from this contact so that you can stay sane enough to get back into the fight. That's what I'll tell you. What got me cured was the comments that came when I did that trapped segment of the Stratosphere Lounge. What the things that people wrote to me in emails and the comments in the YouTube thing, I couldn't bear to look at them because I was shell shocked. My wife read them to me, and when I heard that. When I heard again and again and again and again and again what people were saying, it was just that was it. It was just a tonic. And it was antibiotics is what it was. And what I realized was that it wasn't the ego boost, although certainly part of it was that. It was just the sense of community and concern and caring. The sense that I had the kind of people I had the kind of army who would go out and get you if you got hit by a sniper while you're crossing an alley. That's the kind of people that we have here. And when I realized that, coin a highly overused phrase, it restored my faith in humanity. Not that I had lost faith with the people on our team. It's just that there came a point where it just seems like it's overwhelming. And I guess, Gerard, it's you're feeling that too. So the thing I would strongly recommend is get into the man cave, man. Turn off the news. Don't listen to it. Don't take any of it. Just go in there and and watch whatever you want to watch, and just get away from it. Getting a vacation and going to the beach someplace doesn't help if you're constantly dipping into the news, because that's where the poison is. So so I would recommend that, and then I also just recommend just interacting with people. The members forum is a way to do it. A Facebook page, anything. Don't go to other people's Facebook pages and get more of the poison. Find people who you agree with. I know this is increasing the divide, and this is a big concern of mine. But right now, I become more and more. Yeah, Marisha keeps talking about the Discord server, and I keep meaning to talk about that. And do you want to put the URL up? I'm just can't figure out Discord. I just and I'll try and in fact, I will open a special thing here, and I will make it in bold letters. Thank you. And I will leave it up, and I will try and put a link to it underneath the on YouTube. Hey, come on, you're scrolling so fast you can hardly catch it. Oh, come on. We new. Yep. Now let me make this big and bold. So yes. So hopefully, if I don't screw this up, and that's iffy proposition, I can put this under under the link on YouTube, and the great thing about Discord, I actually did a fair amount of interacting with Discord when we were playing Star Citizen, but I don't know. Anyway, it should be, the Discord server should be like the even more real time than the than the uh, than the members forum. I mean, it's really like it's like a live lounge, it's like live interaction, and that's the thing, folks. There are times when you really need it. Uh, there were days when I've talked about this before. I haven't got into a great deal of detail about it, but there were days when I was so miserable that I went to 3 Narcotics Anonymous meetings in one day, and if there'd been 7 of them, I would have done 7, just to be with in the company of people who were going through what I was going through. And here's the thing that nobody will believe or understand, but I'm telling you the truth. I have never done drugs in my life. I have never ever had a drug problem ever. I've never had a drinking problem either. And so when a counselor recommended I go to this thing, this is my exact quote. I've got just about every problem in the world that I can think of, but drug and alcohol abuse are not to them. I just don't have it. But I did have an addictive personality, and I suppose I always will. And that ability to get immediate relief by talking to people who are on your side, who understand what you're going through, that is what saves so many lives. The 12 steps are a way for you to get out of your own ego walls, and to get out of this hollow sense of nothing being there, and at the same time being responsible for everything, which is an interesting contradiction. But and while the 12 steps are really tremendously, brilliantly effective, the essence of Alcoholics Anonymous or Narcotics Anonymous or anything else, the essence of it is that you are not alone, that you are with people who care about you the second you walk in the door, and they care about you the second you walk in the door because somebody cared about them the second they walked in the door. This is the whole pay it forward thing. I'd never heard the expression before that. So I'll put the Discord link up here, and then hopefully it'll be kind of like a 24-hour place where you can just go to unload. Let me see here. Dave Bushner says, Bill, I always did think that was a little odd, you going to NA without being an addict, but now I'm in recovery myself. I totally get it. It's the community, man. What I was always missing. Amen, brother. I feel your pain, and that's not just a toss away sentence. I genuinely do. And we'll get it on the website too, Marusha, but that's a Scott Odd issue, and he's out of town for a day or two. It's the community. That's what does the healing. And that's what healed me from the 1,000-yard stare I had 2 weeks ago on the virtue signal when I simply was just out of elastic. There comes a time when you're just out of elastic, you know? You falling back, taking it, okay, pushing back, trying to find a positive spin on it, great. Comes a point when the thing won't stretch anymore. And that's where I was. And I had a show to do, and I couldn't talk about anything. And so I decided to talk about the fact that I couldn't talk about anything. And that was the right thing to do. Not only for me, but for everybody else. That's what it takes. Dave was saying, it's the community. There's a moment in these 12-step programs. It's by far the hardest moment. It's without question the hardest moment. And that's the first moment when you basically just stand up and say, hey, my name is Bill and I'm an addict and I'm glad to be here. And then people say, keep coming back. That was the mantra. Keep coming back, keep coming back, keep coming back, keep coming back. Because they understood instinctively, as I understood instinctively, that I needed to be around people so that I could tell that I almost said I needed to be around people so that I could tell myself I wasn't crazy. That's not actually it. I needed to be around people who could tell me that I was crazy and they were crazy the same way. And so therefore, since we're all crazy together, why don't we just stop carrying the burden of feeling like, this is just you. Yeah, you're here in a room full of crazy people. And I've said it a few times before, I'll say it again. I thought when I had a psychologist tell me to go to Narcotics Anonymous meetings, I said I don't have a drug or alcohol problem, and I don't see any reason to go. She said, "Go, you have to go." So I went. And the first two meetings, I just sat there like a fire in a coal mine. That's what I was like. It was like a fire in a coal mine. I was outside. I was just kind of calm. It was just burning on the inside. I was so angry that I had to be here. I was just so angry. And then the third meeting, somebody stood up and told my life story, and that's when it became clear to me. But that moment when you admit that you've got this problem. I'm not trying to turn this conservative rant into a self-help rant. All I'm trying to do is say that there are similarities in terms of the cure, or at least the medication, right? From your question, Gerard, you're feeling the same kind of pain I am. It's ripping the soul out of us, and that's what it's designed to do. Knowing that's what it's designed to do helps fight it. When you know that the despair that you're feeling, watching this Rittenhouse case or whatever, when you know that sense of despair and living in an insane world and what the hell happened, knowing that is the target, that is the effect that the weapon is designed to produce, helps, because then you realize that the despair is essentially just walking into their minefield. But on top of that, talking to other people, and as Marusha pointed out, the nice thing about Discord is that it's not just a type thing. Every moment I've ever spent on Discord was actually speaking to other people, just having conversations. So I am going to get real serious about promoting this because I hadn't fully realized the power of it until this episode. But yeah, that's what I would do to answer your question, Gerard. I would get away from it so that you could get back into it again, and that's that. From Trevor Duell. Hey, Bill, today's my birthday. It's November 7th on the tag, so happy birthday, Trevor. Even if it was yesterday, happy birthday. Sincere happy birthday. It's a great tradition. Hey, Bill, today's my birthday. How about a shout out? I've always been a fan of yours since the PJ TV days. Nearly cried when you told the story about your father's funeral at Arlington and the role that the Army band played in that moment. I'm an Army musician. Our field is constantly faced with cuts and closures, so your story means a great deal to me. It might be strange to think that our military creates art, but I believe it to be essential to the republic we seek to reclaim. Thank you for all you do. Wow. Trevor, I am so, so, so glad that you've given me a chance to talk about this. Um, I can't tell you how grateful I am to you for writing that question. Those of you who may be new to join us, I mean, within the last several months or so, let me just do a very, very brief recap. Before I was doing videos and before I was writing, I was just a guy. I was a guy who loved the country. It was right after 9/11, and I realized that it's time to do something. My dad died in 2002. He was cremated. He died on a fishing trip. He died as happy as a man could ever be. It was the best exit that anyone could have ever written for anyone. That gives me a fair amount of comfort, actually. But in October, he was interred. His ashes were interred at Arlington, and I went to that ceremony. And in this essay I wrote called Honor, I talked about how it was so cold. Now, I'm a Florida, Bermuda, California guy, but it was cold, cold. Again, it could be in the early morning in Washington. Is it can get cold. It was cold and wet cold, and I got there. We got there plenty of time, obviously, and I had some time to kill, and I didn't want to sit in a room full of other people who were sad. So I got out and just started walking, and I was looking at the headstones, and the headstones are identical. And I found that to be remarkable because if you walk Arlington and you're not looking for anybody specifically, you see that this guy is a major general and right next to him is a private. This guy is World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and then the other guy was in the service for 7 months or something, died at age 18, 19. He's in Arlington. And that impressed me so much. That just made me so proud. But went back to the place. Kind of, it's not really a welcome center or visitor center. It's just a room. I don't remember much about that, to be honest with you. I do remember we went from that room, got in a van, we drove out to the field, and when we got out of the van, and there weren't many of us, there was a huge crowd for my dad's, actual kind of funeral, but that was a couple months earlier. And so there were not a whole lot of us there. And we got out of that van, and it was so cold. And I looked out there, and I see just these ranks of 18-year-old men in the honor guard, and then another whole ranks and ranks of guys in the Army band. And I realized these guys are 18, 19, 20. That's the age my dad was when he signed up. I tried to sign up before then. I had to get a hernia problem, but he got to Germany when he was 20. So roughly that age. And then, the actual ashes were in a container about this big. But to be perfectly honest with you, having a horse-drawn caisson with a box this big is a little bit of a disappointment. It's visually not so striking. So, and I'm making a point here, so all of these little things add to this. So, what they did was, they had a coffin-sized coffin thing, and they put the ashes into that, and then they draped the flag over it, so you got a little more substance there, because having everybody walk around, something the size of a teapot, not so impressive. So they start the horses, and it's just the rim, the sticks on the rim, and the commands were so quiet, and this is where the writer in me came in. When I wrote that essay, I said and I said it was so quiet that only the dead could hear, and it was so solemn. It was just this, not even music, just a beat to march to. And you see all these guys in this perfect uniforms and perfect attention, standing in perfect attention to freezing cold for a guy who they never met, who was never shot at, not a hero under any circumstances. He's the first guy to tell you that. But he did sign on the dotted line, and he did go over there. And so that gave him the right. And I saw I forget, it was like 40 people in the honor guard, 40 people in the band, and we're marching around this corner, and it's overcast and it's so cold, and then I know this sounds like it's imagined, but it just wasn't. It just wasn't. We turned this corner, and as we turned the corner, the the army band went from just this, just from the sticks, they went just all of a sudden these horns, just the trumpets, ba ba ba, ba, and it was a triumph. It was a triumphal march. It was the sound that Caesar makes coming back after defeating the Goths. It was magnificent. Just this, it was so upbeat and magnificent. Just this wall of sound, just this brass, like angels, and right at that moment the sun came out, and I had my sunglasses on the whole time because I was crying. And I remember when that sound hit me from the band, when that sound hit me, I could feel it. It was like a shock wave. It was like a blast wave coming off of an explosion. It was an emotional shock wave, and it knocked all the crud right out of me. It just knocked the crud off of me. All of this stuff I've been carrying around, all just boom, blew it to atoms. And then you get there, and then you've seen this in movies 100 times, and you see the well, I guess he's a pastor, army chaplain. Sorry, and he presents the flag to the widow, and he said, our brother William has come to rest with heroes. And I just thought, no better place for him, no better place for him. And after that was over, I talked to the chaplain, Major Crisp, about a bunch of things. But when I was going home, I wrote about this and I sent it into USS Clueless. He published it. Steve Dembest put it on the page, got a big response. And Rachel Lucas came out of nowhere and said, you need to start a blog. And I don't know how to start a blog. What the hell's a blog? She set it up for me, and that's where Eject happened, and then Silent America and all the rest of it came out of that. But here's what I realized about that. I realized, in this case it's the Army, but it's true for all the services. I'm going to say something, and it's going to sound flip, and it's not. I'm just going to say what came to mind, and then I'm going to explain to you why I'm not being flip about this. But on the way home, I realized, you know what? The U.S. Army knows how to do death. They know how to do it. They know how to do funerals and grief. They have gotten very, 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 very good at this. And the reason I felt that was because of the way I felt going in versus the way I felt coming out. Going in, you're just sad and you're down and you've had this loss and you just see these stones and so on. But when you see the commitment of the men in the band, the commitment of the men in the honor guard, when you see the amount of time it took for them to fold and inspect the flag, just that, the amount of time they invested in my dad, who had not been in the Army for 50 years, the amount of time it took for them to fold that flag and then inspect it with the white gloves, just that part of it alone, that investment gave meaning to my father's life, gave meaning to him. He was a world-class hotel manager, really running one of the best hotels in the world and making it work. And over the course of time, he just, like anybody else, just kind of get on the backside of your career. And, last time he was fired on the phone. Okay, so he'd done all this. Most of his life he'd spent in the hotel business. Hotel business had nothing to do with him. But the Army, when he had signed up as a young man, didn't forget him. They remembered. And they all turned out. And I could not believe it. We got the 21-gun salute because he was an officer, but even if you don't have the officer, it doesn't matter. They know how to do grief. They know how to do death. And what I mean by that is they know how, they have this procedure, this military funeral is something that has been worked out, I almost said sadly, but gloriously, a lot of times. They've had a lot of practice doing this, a lot of practice. And what it does is it invests the person you've lost with a majesty and an immortality. That's what it is. It gives somebody who's gone a sense of immortality. Our brother William has come to rest with heroes, and whenever I think about my dad today, I think where is my dad now? Oh, well, hopefully he's up in heaven. Knowing my dad, there's a 50-50 chance that he's actually down in hell organizing things, but physically he's in a white marble structure, resting with his brothers, with heroes. And the music is such a big part of that, because you've got basically three choices here in a funeral ceremony, right? You can go with the dirge. Dun, 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 dun. We're all supposed to feel sad, so let's have sad, solemn music, and let's all be very, very serious, and all the rest of it. Or option two is you can go the New Orleans route, or the Irish wake route, where you just have a raucous good time, just a ha ha. The famous New Orleans jazz is when they go down the street and everybody's having a party. It's not sad at all. But this is the third option. It's not lighthearted and it's not heavy. It's important. It's magnificent. It's weighty. And when you come out of there, you get a sense of closure that I've never felt in any other. I've never had that experience anywhere else ever, and I don't expect I will either. A sense of completeness, a sense of, okay, everything. It's not like all the loose ends of your missing parents are tied up. It's not that the big hole where your dad used to be has been, all the loose ends have been tied up. It's that they've been tied up meticulously, and it takes 20 minutes to fold this flag, a little less than that, but when they're folding that flag and inspecting it, just this, it's cauterizing this. It's wrapping it up in silver threads, and when it's over, it's over. And I left all my grief and all my sadness, I left at Arlington. And I've never once, ever once since then felt bad about that at all. At all. In fact, typical for my dad, who really, really was fond of getting his way. I've never, ever heard of, and I don't think I will ever hear of, anybody who checked out under better circumstances and who got a better send-off. I really don't. It just doesn't get better than that, He was on a fishing trip in Canada. They were on a seaplane. There was no place there. It was just GPS coordinates. He's going fishing. He was a big fisherman his entire life, hunter, fisherman, outdoorsman. My cousin had taken him and his younger brother, that would be my Uncle Jack, and a couple others, paid for this trip to go fishing out in the woods of Canada. They land on the lake. They're getting ready. They have to sign some kind of papers or forms or something. They're going up this little pathway to get to the lake here. And as my dad's going up this little trail, he sees guys coming down the trail. They're carrying, salmon that are the size of the size of something this big. And he's walking up the things, and all of a sudden my Uncle Jack says, "Hang on a second, Jack." And he looks back and he sees my dad. My dad sits down on the ground and says, "Hang on, I just feel a little funny." Sits down, closes his eyes, gone. 10 minutes earlier, he was like a 4-year-old kid with his face on the edge of the window looking at this lake, and he said, "Jack, we're going to take every goddamn salmon out of that lake. We're not going to leave a single one in there." And so that's as good as it gets. Now, there's something in the comment section here that got my immediate attention from CP Tomes here. Paul Engelhardt was the Navy QC. quality control inspector that refused to pass the welds on the diving control systems on the Thresher. They shipped him out to Maine. Then the Thresher went down. I talked about the Thresher in my favorite, by far my favorite episode of the Cold War. What we saw was the episode about cloaks and daggers and submarine warfare. And I had never heard that the Thresher had pre-existing mechanical problems. I have never heard that before just now. I did read, I think last week, that they found out that individuals and companies apparently were lying about the strength of the steel that they were using to build American nuclear submarines with. They're lying about this. The steel is not as strong as it's supposed to be. I hear that, and I go into vapor lock myself. It's one of those Star Trek Norman coordinate. It's smoke coming out of my ears. I cannot imagine how somebody could make that decision. I can't imagine it. It's beyond me that such a thing could happen. Yeah, Marusha said they lied about the Titanic. Is this really a shock? Yes, it's a shock. It's an enormous shock. I'll just tell you what comes to mind. If I had a choice, I'd rather have weakened steel on an ocean liner than in a submarine. So, there you go. Anyway, back to you, Trevor. If you say you were in the Army band, you have no idea. You have no idea how much pain you have cauterized, and how much comfort you have given to so many people. You have no idea. The music is what drives the emotion of that ceremony. It's the music. That's where the power is. And for that choice of a triumphal march was pitch perfect. And my only regret is I don't remember what that piece was called. I asked Major Crisp about it, and he told me, and I didn't write it down, and I've forgotten it, because I would love to get a listen to that again. It was spectacular, absolutely spectacular. Yeah, the Thresher. Well, I guess we're talking about funerals in Arlington. The comment stream got, I can't remember it. It's completely gone. The comment stream started talking about the Thresher. If you're watching this on YouTube, USS Thresher was the first of a new class of attack submarines that came in right after the Skipjack class. And they were taking her out for some test dives, and she just kept going down. And they couldn't get back. And they... pretty sure that I've forgotten the details now. I want to say something where one of the batteries might have been outgassing hydrogen or something. Anyway, the reactor scrammed. It automatically shut down. And the buoyancy emergency tanks that would normally you would blow to bring the thing up through buoyancy, those valves have been clogged because of it was seawater, salt water, something. But Thresher just kept going down and passed her crush depth, and then just went. And I same thing happened to the Scorpion. Thresher was 63, I want to say, somewhere around there. Scorpion was 68. That much I remember. Here's something I remember from the Scorpion issue when I did the research for this on the Cold War. It's some things are cold comfort, to say the least. When somebody dies, it is cold comfort to find out things like, well, your dad's gone, but he went in with a smile on his face. That helps. I've never heard that before. That the Thresher was below crush depth with men and communicating for about 2 days. I know the Thresher was doing a dive. They were doing a spiral dive, and they would dive and then they'd level off and spiral. There was a support ship directly over them, directly over them, and then it just kept going. And I know they got messages out, but declassified ship logs from the surface ships say so they were alive for 2 days. I don't know if I can buy that, man. I remember what the depth was, but it was something like, I want to say it was like 8,000 feet. I'll take a look. I certainly take a look, and I'm not trying to dismiss it, but if I remember correctly, the depth that they found the Thresher was so far beyond crush depth that the idea that they might still be on the bottom, I don't know. In any event, I just don't think it's physically possible. We'll see. In any event, I did the research for this same kind of thing on Scorpion. So for those of you who've ever wondered about the horror of dying in a submarine, here's some cold comfort for you. On USS Scorpion, when they found it at the bottom of the ocean, it was very deep, and it was the Skipjack class. It was the first modern-looking submarine, first submarine that was shaped like a teardrop. So it was the first of the American subs it was the first sub in the world that had this really hydrodynamic shape. Big sail, dive planes on the sail, but oh my God, I'll get to that second stage. So obviously the back of it tapers, and much more than they do today. The LA class, for example, is pretty much a straight tube, but the Scorpion pretty much just got narrower and narrower and narrower. And when they found it on the bottom, and by the way, I love these kind of things. Robert Ballard found the Titanic in 1986, I think. And he set sail with a great deal of fanfare. We're going to go look for the Titanic. He was actually on a mission to find the Scorpion and take pictures of the Scorpion. And since they got that done fast enough, then he got to go look for the Titanic. 85. Anyway, the back of the Scorpion, the entire tapering section had been smashed in, had been telescoped into the hull from the pressure. Okay. They've said that it's an instantaneous death, but it's actually more impressive than that in a weird sort of way. The guys who did the calculations, the engineers, figured out that when the Scorpion's hull finally gave, that the back of the Scorpion came forward and it was traveling at 2,000 miles an hour. 2,000 miles an hour. It's what, maybe 100 feet away? Like that. As a matter of fact, since people are concerned about things like this because they're important, they did a look at how long it took for that to go from a surface atmosphere to dead, and they said it was about 0.11 seconds. Roughly a tenth of a second. And then I did some additional research, and I found out that Usain Bolt, who's run the fastest any man has ever run, the amount of time between Usain Bolt hearing the starting pistol and the first motion of his legs is 0.13 seconds. You can pretty much say that Usain Bolt on a starting line waiting for that pistol is about as fast as a human being can react. And the Scorpion was utterly destroyed in less time than it takes for Usain Bolt to leap when the pistol goes, which means that the crew literally did not know what hit them. They simply didn't know. They're here. It wasn't like crack or flooding or no. It's just 1 second we're here, next second we're gone, and that is, again, cold comfort. I do have to go, so I'm going to just finish this one, and then I will. I'll try and get the rest of these questions. They've been great questions. The thing, just because this came up from Sarge. 56TX said, Bill, my nephew wounded in Ramadi took his own life in August this year. The Army flag ceremony at his funeral was amazing. I know what you mean about amazing. But, you know, we were just talking about this a few minutes ago with Jared's question. That should never have happened. It should never have happened. That kind of desperation, that kind of emotional pain, and it takes an enormous amount of emotional pain to do this. I hear people say, oh, suicide, that's a coward's way out. I find that to be a very, very dismissive and condescending kind of attitude. Sarge, your nephew took his own life because he had seen and done things that no one else could understand or relate to except for the other people who had seen and done it themselves. There are some suicides where the person, there's a line that says that the suicide is always, the person that kills himself is always shooting at somebody else. So there are some suicides where you have people who are, I'm going to show her, or, you know, or whatever, but they're all the ultimate tragedy. But in the case of the military suicides, which are so much higher than the general population, it comes down to you are suffering an intense level of pain, and you cannot release it, and you can't share it. The amount of emotional distress I was in 2 weeks ago when I did that Trapped episode is minuscule compared to that. And I know it's minuscule because I've been in much worse places than I was last Thursday or 2 Thursdays ago. Much worse places. But talking about it helped. And hearing the response from people on YouTube and all the emails I got helped enormously. Enormously. In fact, it didn't just help, it cured it. The fact that your nephew killed himself is a result of the fact that he ran out of strength and options and time, where the pain was so great that he could not withstand it anymore. And the thing about it is that if he had been able to share that, I'm not saying it would have made a difference, but I am saying I'm virtually positive it would have made a difference. You know, we spend so much money and time training our soldiers and airmen and Marines, sailors, Coast Guardsmen, and now Space Force people. We spend so much time training them to go and fight our wars, and we spend no time whatsoever training them to get back into civilian life. We just plain kick them out the door. We just kick them out the door. No one, for an instant, would think that you could take a recruit off of a bus, shave his head, and then instead of having basic training begin, just shave his head, put a rifle in his hand, and throw him into combat. No one for a second thinks that would do that. No army in the world does that. We train them how to get into war and combat, but we don't do anything to train them on how to come out of it. We just simply throw them off the bus and into society. One of the stories I remember reading with regard to Vietnam vet, I'm about to use the F word here because there's no way that I am going to minimize this by saying the F word, so brace yourself. But one of the most simple, small, and therefore most important and telling stories I ever heard was from a guy who was just a really good kid, good country boy kind of thing. Came back from Vietnam. He's sitting there at Thanksgiving and he says to his grandmother, he says, pass the fucking butter. You leave something there. Nobody comes back from that unwounded. No one comes back unwounded. I believe you can serve in the. In fact, I believe most people serve in the military without suffering that kind of scar. But combat veterans, people who have been shot at and who've had to shoot at other people, and even if you're not actually in physical combat, people who are in combat zones have to deal with the stress of that, have to see the bodies and all the rest of it. You leave something there and you don't bring it back. You can't bring it. It's something important, and it's innocence. It's the ability to not see things. That's what we all. That's what we have. And if you really, really want to get down to brass tacks, the reason that people like your nephew Sarge ended up killing himself was because we sent him there to lose his innocence so that we didn't have to lose our innocence. That's what it's all about. Sarge has got it. As a Marine myself, I see the problem. They break them down as individuals and then build them back up as a team. They don't do the reverse when they discharge them. They left behind too many friends and comrades and could not overcome that guilt. Yes, exactly. We're going to break down your individuality. We're going to, because we have to, because that's the best way to achieve our objectives with this war. And it's also the best way for you to survive. Most likely way for you to survive is to follow orders from people who know what's better than you. When somebody says, get down, it's better if you actually do that than discuss it. In any event, so we don't bring them back. Dave Big Booty says before the discharge, should service members go through a 2-week re-individualization? No, that's ridiculous. They should go through a 4-month re-individualization. They should go through an equivalent amount. They should probably go through more time if they've been combat vets. They should spend more time decompressing than they did preparing for the dive in the first place. Because you see things that you can't unsee and you can't ever forget. And you can never get it back. Now, Dave Bushner says maybe they're simplistic, but couldn't we just keep them together as a team for the rest of their lives? It's not simplistic, Dave. That's the answer. That's the answer. The answer is we need to keep them together as a team for the rest of their lives. Yes. But we don't have to keep, we not only don't have to, we cannot and should not do that in uniform. We need to give these guys the kind of social networks and social connections so that when they get out of the armed services, they have their fire team available. They can get on the radio and they can call in an airstrike. In the civilian world, when you've dealt with that kind of stress, fear, forget just the psychological aspect, just the physical effect of explosions on the human body. It destroys your nervous system. Shell shock is not, when you see the guys from World War I, it didn't just happen in World War I, they didn't stop artillery at the end of World War I. It's just the last time people were willing to deal with it honestly. And George Carlin, who I disagree with about a lot of things, one of the best thing he's ever done was talking about how language gets more and more sanitized and less accurate. In World War I, he said it was called shell shock, 2 adjectives, perfectly descriptive. In World War II, it was combat fatigue, 4 adjectives, not so descriptive. Then it became post-traumatic stress disorder and all the rest of it. It gets more clinical and less real. Shell shock. But when you look at these guys from World War I, and you see them just it's not that they've got a psychological problem. God knows that they've had that too. And it's not just that they're nervous. Their actual physical nervous system has been essentially shattered by overpressure waves. Sometimes on a battlefield, you will find soldiers in a position and they look like they're sleeping. And you go to shake them and they're dead. And there's not a mark on them. Not a mark on them. And they've been killed by overpressure. The shock wave pulped their organs and didn't leave a mark on them. This is what you go through. And your nervous system is essentially damaged or destroyed. So yes, these guys need to stick to, you got it exactly right, Dave. It's like they need to stay together. They went through this as a team. They need to come out as a team. We need to make sure that these guys have a hotline, a radio line to other guys, because when you're under that kind of fire and the world is going to hell, the only comfort you get is getting on the radio and saying they're beating the living crap out of us, and you hear somebody on the other line say A-10's inbound, ETA 4 minutes. That is what gives you the strength to continue on with this thing. And if we'd had this kind of network where your nephew could have gotten on the internet or made a phone call and basically said to people who were either in his squad or in other squads, people who know what it's like to be under fire, said to them, man, I am being overrun here. I am being overrun, and I need an artillery strike, danger close right now. Then other people who've been through it and who may not be in that particular bad of a spot for any number of reasons can come to their aid and can get them some, put some firepower on the enemy. It's not just disgraceful. It's because it's not. I can't call it disgraceful because it's not intentional. It's just stupid. It's stupid, and it's something we don't have a right to be stupid about. We can't just keep ignoring this forever, pretending it doesn't happen. It's stupid, and it's cruel. Sarge is saying here, this happened to his nephew who was injured in an IED attack while he was recuperating in a German army hospital. His 5 Humvee buddies were all killed in another IED attack. He wasn't there for them. Guilt. Yes, that's what killed him. It's the guilt that killed him. I'm going to tell you guys something that is going to be so easy to mock that it's very difficult for me to say this. I was thinking, wow, how do you ever deal with that survivor guilt? I had a moment when I just completely broke down because I was feeling survivor guilt because I didn't fight in the Battle of Britain in a Spitfire. I know how absurd that sounds, and I know how self-centered it sounds, but there was a time when I was just overwhelmed with the fact that I should have been there, and I wasn't. I felt I should have been on board one of those airplanes. I feel like if I'd been on one of those airplanes, it could have made a difference. And that's as close as I've come to it. So if you have something that abstract being painful, oh God. Sarge says he took his life during the withdrawal from Afghanistan. We wonder. Well, of course you. Oh, for God's sake. This is too important and too big to make into a political issue. But leaving the domestic politics of it out, when people die, especially when your friends die, because if you die, you don't have to worry about this anymore. When friends die and you leave that part of you back there, your only consolation is that it was about something. I just spent a half an hour talking about how the Army Band made me feel like my father's life had meaning because of that ceremony. I knew he had meaning, but it was the tangible evidence of it. Tangible evidence of it. And when I watched what happened in Afghanistan, I thought, I don't care about, I really don't. I don't care about Afghanistan. I probably should, but I don't. I understand that there are innocent people there suffering, but this is the society that you've lived in forever. You've always been like this. I don't really feel that. But for the soldiers that came back from that, of all the people that are alive today, the one small group of people that I have my enormous, overwhelming sympathy is, I cannot imagine what it must have been like to be one of those soldiers who was at the gate of Kabul airport with the gates locked and having U.S. citizens show up with their passport in their hands saying, let me in or these people are going to kill me. And then some private has to say, no, you have to go back out there into the Taliban and come around on the other side because of the suicide bombing looked bad for the president. So we can't let you through. They were turning American citizens with passports in their hand away back into the Taliban at the gate to the airport. And put aside all the disgrace of that, what do you think that those soldiers, those individuals, those actual people, what do you think those people are, how are they going to deal with the rest of their lives? How could you do that to your own men? How? The best war story I ever heard, I heard from the guy who experienced it. And it was Dick Rutan. And Dick Rutan was he was a Misty pilot, fast forward air controller. They flew 6-hour missions over Vietnam in F-100s, calling in marking targets, and the fatality rate was really high. A significant number of them got shot down, including Dick Rutan. And I'll just say this because this needs to be said about the Afghanistan thing, and then I think I'm done for the night. So Dick had flown a number of combat missions in the F-100, and finally he got recruited for the Misties. The reconnaissance airplanes that we had were just too slow. They were just getting shot out of the sky. They would send up essentially a Piper Cub to call in an airstrike, shoot that out of the sky. Then we came up with the Mohawk. It's a little better, but it's still slow, and the Sky Raider is still slow. So finally, the U.S. Air Force says we got to try something different. So instead of having slow guys loitering over the battlefield, marking targets, we're going to send them in fast. We're going to send them in 2-seat F-100s. And these were, their call sign was Misty, and there was a certain number of them. I forgot the number. I want to say it's about 158 or something like that. And that's all there was. So every one of them is, I'm Misty 14, I'm Misty 116, and so on. The Bronco, not the Mohawk. Bronco, thanks. So Dick Rutan is one of these Misty guys. And he is in the AO, and an American jet gets shot down, and Dick is high and fast overhead, circling in his F-100. The pilot ejected down into the jungle canopy. He's got his handheld radio. He's able to talk to Dick, but his radio can't reach all the way back to wherever the hell top command was for the Air Force. Probably back in Saigon someplace. Anyway, so Dick is able to talk to him. So they bring in some rescue helicopters, some choppers to pick him up, and the ground fire is so intense that they push the choppers back, and then Dick gets a radio call up there, up high, safe, relatively safe, saying we're not coming in. We can't come in. It's too hot. We're not coming after him. And at this point, Dick tells me this story face to face. He said, "Let me explain something to you. We went into that war, and we went into that particularly dangerous mission because I had an agreement with my government. And the agreement worked like this. I will risk my one young life that I have, and I'll put it on the line for this country. But if I get in trouble and I go down there, then the other end of that deal is that my country will do whatever it takes to come and get me. That's the deal. That's how it works. I'm willing to sacrifice, risk my life, and give it if I have to, in exchange for the understanding that if I find myself unarmed and out there in the middle of nowhere, then the government will come after me. That's the deal." And Dick says, now I'm here in this airplane, and I have to radio to a guy on the ground who's just been shot down doing the work of the United States government mission that he was on from the Air Force. I have to tell this guy that we're not coming for him. I have to tell him, no, we're just leaving you. It's too dangerous, too risky. So Dick said, and if you know Dick Rutan, you don't have any trouble believing this story. So Dick got the radio call saying, you're going to have to relay to the guy that we're not coming after him, that it's just too hot. And Dick went through that thought process that I just explained to you, and he got back on the radio and he said, I'm not going to do it. You're what? I said, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to tell him. I refuse to pass on that information. So all of a sudden, somebody higher up on the chain of command comes in and says, look, we understand, Misty, 58 or whatever Dick was. We understand that this is a tough situation and so on, but you need to pass that message on to this guy. And then Dick said the most brilliant thing I've ever heard. He said, all right, I'll tell him. But I want a general to get on the radio right now, and I want him to tell me what I need to say to this guy. I want the guy who made the decision to not go after this guy. I want him to get on the radio right now and tell me what I'm supposed to say to this guy. I want the exact words. I want him to tell me precisely what I need to say to tell this guy that we're not coming for him. A lot of static, long time. And then they come after him. They send in a second attempt. A PJ goes down, parajumper goes down, finds the pilot, pulls him up. There's a funny coda to that story that adds a nice little kind of a little cherry on the story. So Dick saved that guy's life. He saved his life because it's not just that he disobeyed order; it's that he had the moral clarity to say, the person who just made that decision is now going to have to execute the results of that decision. He doesn't just, we're just gonna have to leave mine and then go and have a scotch. No, he's gonna have to tell me what to say. So, here's the so they send a line down, and a parajumper, the rescue guy, incredible heroes, these guys, is on this line being winched down into the jungle. They can see the downed pilot there. They hook him up to the harness. He hooks himself up. I got the sequence just a little bit out of sequence. They hook him up to the harness. They start lifting him up, and the Huey comes under an intense ground fire, just taking hits everywhere, taking hits. And the PJ, the guy who's gone in to rescue the pilot, says, "Go, get out of here, get out, just go." And the helicopter pilot say, "No, we're not leaving you, man. We came back to get this guy. We're not going to leave you down there, you know." So they just hovering. He's just things turn it into a cheese grater. And so finally, the PJ grabs onto the cable, and as I understand the story, he just goes vertical in the hover and flies out of there with these two guys hanging on the end of a rope, basically as he's getting out of there at the speed of heat. So they finally winch these guys in. They're safe. They're on their way back to the base. They winch these guys in. The pilot turns to the parajumper and says, "That is one of the great," he's shouting over the rotors, "that is one of the most heroic things I have ever seen, you telling us to get clear here, and save ourselves, and you would be left behind." And the PJ says, "I wasn't doing that for noble reasons. I was doing it because big pieces of helicopter were landing on my head. I wanted you to get out of there before you crashed on top of me. I was trying to save my life." Gets better. The pilot, some reason or another, well, because he's a pilot. What do pilots use for birth control? Their personalities. The pilot then decides, when he gets back, he's going to bring court-martial charges against the helicopter team for some reason or another. And and all of the guys who were involved in this said, "We should have just left the son of a bitch down there. If we'd known he was such a jackass, we would have just cheerfully left this POS down there. He's going to court-martial us because we didn't rescue him in time or whatever." What a douche. There's a guy, an aviation guy, I mentioned him at the beginning and I got lost as usual, who was a pilot who he was in an airplane, the plane was on fire on the ground, and somebody came and pulled him out, and pulling him out, he cut the guy's leg or something like that. And so the pilot sued him, took him to court, because he didn't pull him out of his burning airplane correctly or with his permission. When you get in a world like this, it's time to build a new fleet, right? You can't have a society survive with that kind of. Now that's not rampant, obviously. My brother Steve, who's a year younger than me, I don't know where it came from. I've been first person on the scene of a number of auto accidents, and I just immediately just get out there. My brother Steve was going to work 10 years ago, and he sees this car on fire, and there are two people in the car. And so he gets out and runs to the car, and he can't get the door open because it's locked, and the people inside are so panicked and so terrified, and they're probably they're certainly getting a lot of smoke. So the door's locked, and he can't get them to unlock it. So, and it's possible because he didn't tell me anything about the story. I didn't even know he did it until I saw it in the news. Um, so he runs back to his car and gets his crowbar out of the back, the tire iron out of the back, changing tire. And he runs forward and he smashes the windows on this car and reaches in, unclips these people, pulls them out. He and another guy. And that's what happens all the time here. That's what happens happens all the time here. This is why I'm on the right team. I live in a country where if somebody's car is on fire, people will run to the car and smash windows and burn themselves to pull them out. That hasn't gone. That's why we fight, so that it doesn't go away, right? I am seeing signs of people watching these kind of things, and the first thing they do is get their phone out, so they can get a video with a lot of views. But generally speaking, no, we do that. This is the last thing I'll say. So 3 or 4 of these, yeah, Marisha Clark, the for the win, right? For the win. So a guy like my brother goes and smashes a window to get a burning guy out of a car, save his life, risk his life. And then the prosecution says, well, why did you do that? What made you feel like you had to get involved with that? Who were you to go over there? And are you a professional firefighter? What made you think you had to go over there and rescue this guy? What gave you the idea that you should get involved with this? Because people were on fire? Because they were burning? So that just can't, that has to stay. And I think it does stay. I think it's how we're built. And I think they've tried to wash that out of us, and they've done an awful lot of damage. They're going to do more damage before it's over, but they're not going to do it. They're not going to succeed. Now it's up to us, and I say us meaning us, not meaning conservatives or whatever. I mean, it's up to us individually to figure out how we're going to build this new society that's immune to, or not, if not immune to, is certainly capable of defending itself and defeating people who sue people for pulling them out of the car that they're on fire in. We're everybody watching this is a Kyle Rittenhouse, right? Everybody watching this, if you're here now, because you're the kind of person who runs towards a fire, and there you go. Coconut ED5 says there's a video of a plane crashing next to a baseball game, and everyone, players and fans, run across the field and climb over the outfield fence to go help. Yep, that's right. That's right. And it's not a universal thing. The most the single most concrete piece of evidence that I have seen in my lifetime about American exceptionalism, the single greatest piece of proof I have ever seen and am likely to see, is the story of what happened on that train that Clint Eastwood made that movie about. And he made the movie with the original people in it, and that was a mistake. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. But he made the movie about the terrorist attack on that French train, and he used the actual guys, and that never works. I saw the movie that the SEALs made, I've forgotten the name of it, just something Valor, and they use the actual guys. What makes a good soldier makes a bad actor, and what makes a good actor makes a bad soldier. These things are not mixable. No, it wasn't fiction. In 517 to Paris, yeah, okay. Act of Valor was the one made by the soldiers themselves and stuff. Anyway, SEALs, I think. Anyway, here's what happened. There's a regular commuter train in France, and a guy of undisclosed religious persuasion gets on board the train rather, filled with civilians, packed commuter train, and he gets to the front and he pulls out this AK-47. I don't remember if he actually shot people, but he was starting to. He was just basically going down the aisles and just trying to kill people. And I have a pretty good idea what he was saying while he was pulling the trigger. And On this train full of French commuters, there's a story about one guy who got to the back of the train, was able to get a hold of a phone and made a call, and he called his wife to say goodbye. Called his wife to tell her he loved her and that the train was under attack from a terrorist, and and goodbye, honey, I love you. This is what happened. And the people on that train just sat there and watched this guy going down the aisles and starting shooting people. And the only people that got up and fought back were the only three Americans on the train. The only people that responded were the only Americans on the train. I think two of them were former military. Three Americans got up, ran up, tackled the guy. I'm virtually positive one of them got shot, but they all survived. And what else do you need, you know? I often thought if Flight 93 had happened to Swiss, would they have smashed the cockpit door and taken the plane down? I used to think yes, everybody would. I didn't think that after the French train incident. This is what socialism does to people, right? It's what it does. It makes you passive. You're all just cogs in a machine. And the idea that a train full of Frenchmen would just sit there passively and just wait to be shot, and the only people that charged the guy were the three Americans on board, is a data point that made a big impression on me. The West Virginia shooter basically he went into this classroom, told all of the males, it's almost said men, but all the males, told all of the males to leave. All the males left out of the room, and then he just went down this line and shot all the women. And he had to pause to reload, so they waited patiently while he was reloading, and then they did that. You know, in terms of like the airplane thing, Flight 93, they were the only flight that knew what was going to happen. I say Virginia Tech. But if I have a choice of running down an airplane aisle and a guy's got a 9mm aimed right at me, I've thought about this a lot. I prepare myself in advance. I really like to think, I believe I will run and try and tackle this guy. And the reason is because people have survived multiple gunshot wounds, but no one has ever survived going into the ground at 600 miles an hour. And that clarifies the choices significantly. But why was it that the three Americans took action? It's because we're a bunch of gun-crazy cowboys. That's why. And that's the thing that is most beautiful about this. It's the French intellectuals that were mocking us the most. Oh, you cowboys. Oh, you Americans are so violent. Oh, you love your guns. You love your this. You love your... Oh, you're so simple. You're so primitive. You're so brutal. You're so this. You're so this. You're so this. Go, you know what? Okay. Well, now you know what the payoff is. So there you go. I just have this one little thing that our operations manager gave me today. It's just a little read, and it's just a good thing to close the show on. This apparently is a quote from a nurse. Marisha Dark gets another star. Everybody hates cowboys until it's time to do cowboy things. Yes, that's it in a nutshell. But this is what a nurse said when she was told she had to get the vaccination or had something to do with the vaccine. And this is what the frontline healthcare provider, the nurse, said. And this is a quote. Why did the protected need to be protected from the unprotected by forcing the unprotected to use the protection that didn't protect the protected in the first place? Let me do a little screen grab here. That, my friends, is the quote of the decade right there. So anyway, I gotta go. It's been a pleasure as always, and as always, I regret I didn't get to more questions, but at least I feel like we Got some really, really good ones. This show is made possible by the members at BillWhittlecom. Say it every time I close this show, and I mean it every time I close this show. Every day I go in and look at the total number of members. I look at all of this stuff, and I am every day grateful to come in and do this kind of work. Mobile Moto says, may God bless you all. Take that as useful advice. Find people who believe what you believe, and by all means do it through me or through anybody else, and stay in touch, support each other. You know, no one wins this fight alone. You know, there you go. And for the people that actually, pay for this, we're enormously grateful. And I know many of you who aren't members because of financial hardship. We've had a number of people who had simply had to cancel because of financial hardship. That is not only okay with me, that is enormously gratifying. That we stayed, as part of your expenses that long. So thanks to all of you, for keeping this going. And that'll do it. Now, next week will be Thanksgiving, so no show next week. I will be in Florida. Be a chance to spend the Thanksgiving with my immediate family, my brothers and sister. And not only will it be Thanksgiving, it'll be a chance for us all to get together since my mom died, and a chance to talk about that too. I saw something on YouTube last night. It was on board. It was about a United commercial for the brand new Boeing 337 Stratocruiser, passenger service to Hawaii. Double-decker, everybody wearing a suit, serving hot meals with silverware. I thought that was my mom on that plane. My mom spent a lot of time on that airplane. Going to the planetarium, I am going to try very hard. I think I might be able to. I'm certainly going to go past where the old planetarium used to be, and we'll drive around, all of us, all five of us, including my recently discovered half-sister who never had a family before. So that'll be cool. Anyway, that'll do it. So I will get this one uploaded and not make a mistake like I did last time. And we'll send some pictures, and we'll let you know what's going on. So no show next week, but we'll see you the week after that. Thanks for joining us, and you guys stay in touch with each other out there. And I'll see you soon.